And breathe. A pulsating Sydney derby to cap off this season's trilogy, showcasing the absolute best of the A-League. In atmosphere, quality, rivalry, intensity, goals, noise, and the utmost sense of occasion and drama. It was a hell of a game, the highlight of a terrific round of football. Truly proving the theory that anyone can beat anyone on their day in the A-League, the Jets put 3 past the victory, all in the extremely lengthy extra time. Western United rue their late chances to drop points at MacArthur. Adelaide barely managed to stay in touch with the league leaders. Poor old Ollie Sale, and Asian football is back on this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. My name is Lachlan Avil, and joining me tonight is Jacob Stevens. Jacob, the Wellington game that happened on Thursday, I'm just putting it out there, was not part of the summer football. It was a weekend fixture, just an early weekend. So it's nice to be back to that kind of comings and goings in the A-League.
Yeah, it's normal again. We've craved it for so long now. It is good, and I got a bit confused pre-recording because we were talking about midweek fixtures, and I just automatically assumed we were talking about the A-League, and I got super confused as to why you were talking about it, but obviously no, it's Asian football. I don't know whether it is a case of getting used to having the A-League midweek or the fact that I'm still surprised the Mariners are in Asia, but it's good to be sort of back to normal now. I've just got to reset my own system and be like, right, A-League's on the weekend, Asia in midweek. So
Asia in midweek. It's good to have that back. We will get to that at the end of the show. But Christian Montegan, hello to you. That Sydney derby on Saturday night, just what a brilliant game of football.
Couldn't have asked for anything more, really. Literally had everything, the intensity right from the first minute. And you can tell, like, these derbies, every single time, they deliver, don't they? We always in the past think, is it going to be a boring little draw? They're going to both sit back and defend. But it seems every time these two teams play, it's just, go, go, go. And that was the case. I mean, not even 10 minutes in, a goal to either side. And you're thinking, it's going to be absolutely end to end for the whole match, and you just go by goal for goal. It was just quality, right? The Sydney opener, Caceres through ball was just absolute pinpoint like that, just absolutely set it up, and Kamala's celebration was just like, I'm thinking, what goes through your head to
I love it.
That's so good.
That's so good.
I mean, I do love it. I think you need that theatre and character. I think that's what the A-League really, really needs in terms of a marketing point of view. But I'm just thinking, if you're in his position, if you're in his shoes, it's so risky. You're just getting bottles pelted at him. Like, just get back. And you saw.
I love that there was no thought process behind it either. He just was straight there. Yeah, it was immediately. It was based on
pure. Yeah, it was pure adrenaline. It was just adrenaline. Yeah. Like, you just went straight over without thinking. I think it was one of the Wanderers security or a media person went over to him and said, "What are you thinking? No, go back. Yeah,
one of the family liaisons.
This isn't safe." And then from there, like, the Wanderers obviously responded. Zach Saspert, I think Simon Hill mentioned after he scored the first goal that he scored, I think that was his 4th or 5th goal in a Sydney derby. And obviously he added to his tally. Start of the second half as well, so he just loves this fixture and always thrives. And I thought, like, if from a Wanderers point of view, I thought they managed the game actually pretty well. I thought Sydney dominate. You could say they dominated for more of the match, which is a fair point. But I thought the Wanderers allowed them time on the ball because Sydney are a side who love those short passes with whether it's centre in midfield or Caceres just controlling things. And Wanderers just happy to soak a bit of pressure. And then what I noticed as well was the Wanderers in their back four with a bit of a more of a high line, taking that bold approach and then hitting them on the counter attack a few times, especially in that first half. Probably should have had 1 or 2 more goals to add to them. To be honest. And you thought the Wanderers had more of an identity about them compared to at the start of the season. You thought, who are the Wanderers? But in this match in particular, everyone was fighting for each other, winning the 50-50s, and they were just a real tight core unit, and it was great to watch. But obviously in the end, it counts for nothing to throw away 2 points like that. Conceding 2 late goals, frantic finish, and that's just what you want in a derby, right? To have those thrilling, 90-minute finishes. It feels like this Sydney derbies always end in 90-minute goals for some reason. But no, great viewing, great spectacle, 32,000 in attendance, and this is what you want from an A-League perspective.
Absolutely. I mean, as soon as those first 2 goals went in the first 12 minutes or whatever it was, you just knew we were building to something really cool. And honestly, I'm starting to feel really sorry for Wanderers fans because they've been put through the ringer by this team a fair bit. And you're right, Christian, gauging some of the reaction online, I saw a few people saying, well, you know, at least the team, it felt like they were fighting for each other. It felt like they were fighting for the shirt, for the badge, for the fans. And obviously with 32,000 people screaming on, then it's easy to build into that. But they did show a lot more than that than we've seen all season. And just to have the 3-1 lead ripped away from them so late, Jacob, it's amazing for the neutral and for Sydney fans watching on. But just for the Wanderers' perspective, just to have that ripped away from you again. They haven't won a derby now in 3 this season. So they're going to go through a whole campaign without having a win in this fixture. And that's rough.
Well, they haven't won in, is it 5 or 6 now, I think. So
overall.
It's been a massive streak of poor performances in the derby. And just when they felt like maybe they had it, and you feel like with a 2-goal cushion, you're probably pretty comfortable. Even, you know, at 3-2, they're still probably thinking, we're all right. There's not much time left. You know, we've just got to see it out. And then it's one of those ones where I don't think I can pinpoint them doing anything necessarily poorly, right? There weren't glaring mistakes or anything. It just was the case of Sydney just got the goals. Like, and that last one in particular, the way it fell to Caceres was just luck. Like, there's no other way for it, right? That could have gone any which way. It just happened to fall to the only Sydney player in the area. So that I think would hurt even more for the Wanderers, because they can't even go, well, what can we improve upon? Because it wasn't necessarily anything that they did wrong. It's just that the football gods didn't want them getting that result on that day, and that is as simple as that. Because, you know, they did play an extremely good game. I think Sapsford probably could have had 4 or 5 goals with the way that he played. He had a couple of really good chances.
Definitely 3, right? Like, they had that double block off the line. Like,
that was a crazy one. And he's one of those players who seems to keep stepping up in big games. So, you know, good for the Wanderers to have him. But I'm with Christian. I thought that the Wanderers executed a really good game plan, identified that Sydney are going to be open in transition. So if they can just absorb the pressure and wait for Sydney to cough the ball up and hit them quick, then that was going to serve them well. And, you know, with a clear focus as well on just pinging the ball long, right? They didn't mess around with it too much. They had those runners ready, particularly Milanovic, I saw, was often one of the first getting forward, and then they just get the ball up to those forwards as quickly as you could, and it worked for them. So it was a fantastically entertaining game. But you're spot on, Lockie. It's disappointing for the Wanderers, for the fans, for everybody there at that club, because it's just been a season like this, right, where they've just not got anything. Nothing's fallen their way. They keep getting results like this where you think they should have it, and then they don't. They're running games really close where, you know, in another season, if you turn some of the draws that they've had into wins, you know, they're all of a sudden, you know, pushing for probably top 4. So it's really sucks. But I think that what we saw was a significant improvement in you know, the way that they played in this match compared to how they have done for most of the season so far. So if there's positives to take from it, it's definitely that. It's that there's something going on there now where, hang on, we've seen what these players can do. We know where they thrive, the sort of systems that they like to work within. Now it's about getting the Wanderers to play that more often, and that's going to be obviously Stadic's main concern, is how do I get the players playing like this more frequently? So, you know, he's not been able to find that consistency so far this season, but maybe sort of looking back at this one and going, we had it, we were right there. If we keep playing like this, we will have results for the rest of the season. Maybe that's what's needed to get these players kicking on from this sort of a performance.
For sure. It felt like, Christian, even just the game as a whole, like even taking away the spectacle of it, it was just such a high quality game as well. Like, some of the pieces of quality from individual players just seemed like it was at a higher level. Like that ball from Anthony Caceres for Klimala, the first goal, is absolutely world class. That is beating any defensive line in world football. Like the outside of the foot, just the way he played it kind of inside out for Klimala to run onto. It's just superb. And now we're getting to that point of the year where we're only just a bit over a month away from Socceroo squads and thinking about international football. He's one player that, you know, as we know, has been probably underrepresented in the national team for someone of his quality. He's putting himself well on the map, as well as a few other players in that team.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned a few others. I mean, Brandon Barella, even his assist for Zaf's second goal was world-class as well, just splitting the Sydney defence. And there was, quite a few passages of play in there where, you're right, the quality was really high. And I heard Andy Harper in the first half mention that for the Wanderers, for example, they've been showing these passages of good play. It's been promising, but they haven't been able to be consistent. And I thought in this game, for large parts, they were consistent, right? It's just, can they bring that, like Jacob said, to the rest of the season where, can they get results? So you're right. I thought it was really entertaining, high quality, and a player like Caceres is definitely knocking on the door for more Socceroos appearances, because he's definitely one who I feel as though has been underrated. But you've got a manager in Tony Popovic who looks past that, right? He doesn't care about how many appearances you've had for your national team. If you're sort of lingering on the bench, he'll just give you a chance. And you've seen that with some of the call-ups he's made in the previous couple of international windows. So if he keeps producing this high-level performances, then he'll definitely be getting more appearances in the future upcoming World Cup qualifiers and a few others as well. So really entertaining game.
So another narrative this week, Jacob, that's going to dominate a lot of conversation is the transfer window. This is the last week of the Australian window, so clubs only have so much time to fill up their stocks for the remainder of the season. The only real news we have today over the weekend is that the Wanderers, ironically enough, have brought in defensive reinforcements. So Josh Laws, central defender, had a couple of years at the Phoenix before going a little stint overseas. So they have brought in someone to help them on the back end, which they have needed the last few weeks. Yeah, and
managed to scoop up one of, if not the only remaining sort of A-League quality Australian defender that's available at this point. So, left it late, but with all the reports that are going around about other targets that they might have had then going off elsewhere, you can kind of understand why it's taken so long.
Yeah.
But they've got somebody in, right, which is the key thing for them. Somebody with A-League experience that sort of knows the league a little bit, knows the level. So they'll be plenty pleased with that, I'm sure. And with, not just the injuries that they've had defensively, but I think the performances defensively haven't quite been up to standard from what we sort of expected from them heading into this season. It's looked a little bit off at the back line for the Wanderers. So bringing somebody else in, at absolute worst, it's competition for spots, right? So it's going to hopefully push that level up a little bit. It doesn't let people get complacent. And then, it provides that cover for injury and stuff like that, which they're going to need pretty quickly. I believe it's just a deal to the end of the year. If I'm reading correctly, but
I think so, yeah.
But it's still a good signing for them anyway, because it gives them that option. And then, if he plays well, then there's no reason why they can't extend and keep him around for a little bit longer. But if all they need right now is a stopgap and some help to fill a gap, then you could do a lot worse than somebody with A-League experience. So it seems like a good move for the Wanderers. Hopefully he'll be able to come in and do a job for them, and like we've just been speaking about, hopefully help them find some form and kick on, because they certainly deserved a result with the way they played against Sydney. So maybe having an extra defensive player in there to change things up, or be able to bring off the bench or use in whatever way, they might be able to hold on to these sorts of results in the future.
I tell you what, though, I did see earlier today, Thomas Deng, who is one of those targets you mentioned, he's actually out injured for the next 3 to 4 weeks at Yokohama. So I don't know if it was like a training impact or a soft tissue injury, but could you just imagine if they brought him in and then all of a sudden he's out for a month as well? So there you go. They have, as we understand, a fit centre back. To add to their ranks.
That would have summed up their season, wouldn't it?
That would have been rough. We should mention as well, there have been reports of a brawl outside Sydney Central Station on Saturday night. The facts of this report is that parties may have been from rival sporting teams. Of course, the Western Sydney Wanderers and Sydney FC fans were planted on the title of this report. 2 flares had been lit, and those involved had left before the police arrived on the scene. So obviously there's not a lot of evidence there that we can speak to. What we can say is that flares absolutely were lit inside the stadium. And, we talked about this over the last couple of weeks when we did our episode on police interactions at A-League games. that doesn't help football's relationship with the police force at all. And things like being able to have a march to games, which was denied in this instance to the RBB and to the Cove, hurts the game. So obviously there are things that are outside our control, but for people lighting flares, and if it was fans of the two teams that engaged in this brawl at the train station, then that does not help us either. Let's go to the Newcastle Jets. Christian, it took a little bit longer than the regular 90 minutes of a football game, but they did blow past the victory in the end. Somehow 3-0 was the final scoreline. Obviously, there was a medical emergency that we understand the person involved left the scene okay. So, obviously we're thinking about them and their personal condition, and obviously the right decision for the referees to delay the restart of the game. But it led to this almost awkward scenario where the delay in play was between the awarding of the penalty and the taking of the penalty, talking about icing the kick taker. He had to walk around for a little while, Grozos, and then really have a good think about where he was going to put it. But he slotted it away well, and then the Jets kept on going. Goal scored in the 90 plus 9th, 14th and 20th minute of this one.
Yeah, obviously, in regards to the medical emergency, the right decision was made. I mean, football comes second in those situations, and we're glad that fan is reportedly okay. But yeah, like you said, it made for a lengthy delay between the penalty kick and the awarding of it. Mitch Langerak with a fairly dubious sort of punch to try and get the ball. And you mentioned in the pre-recording that it was partly to do with the wind, which, okay, if he wants to use that excuse then to help his case, and
because it was one of those, like the Tarnert wind, like we've talked about the Tarnert wind all season, right? Like if you're not familiar with it, it just holds up a little bit. I reckon that's what did him.
Yeah, I mean, it was extremely close. Like even when he was there, just about to punch it, you can tell like it was going to be super, super tight, and just unfortunate just to hit the player, and then obvious penalty. You can't have any complaints. And then, like based on the second half performance, the Jets deserved this, right? I mean, Victory did have their spells in the first half, and perhaps maybe the 5 to 10 minutes in the second half, if I'm being kind. But after that, the Jets, they fully deserved, I thought, the 3-0 win. And it goes back, from a Victory point of view to last season, where, especially in the second half of the season, where the goals just dried up. As soon as Fornaroli came back from Asian Cup duty, it was like, they're creating all these chances. They're looking threatening in wide areas, crossing the ball in, but the goals just aren't there. They just can't convert. And that's, I think, the fear for a lot of Victory fans now seeing this game, where like if you come with the ball in the back of the net, like it's stating the obvious, but you're going to really struggle. They're sitting in 6th place. They need to pick up some points desperately if they want to, ensure their final spot. So it's the likes of, Nikos Virgos, for example. I think he needs to really, get on the score sheet more often, because he's doing good work off the ball. It's just that final end product. And that was the same case with Fornaroli, where he was doing the defensive work, the running, tracking back, but in terms of, just putting the ball in the back of the net, it just wasn't falling for him. And it sort of had to do with the service to an extent. I mean, I thought last season Ozani and some of those players could have, done a bit better in that respect. But this season, I think in terms of the creative aspect, it's been fine. Just in this game, I think, it was sort of lost a bit on Victory. And then, obviously the Jets capitalised fully on the second half and deserved their win. But even defensively for Victory, I mean, they had 2 disallowed goals for the Jets. Could have been way more. I mean, there were 2 offside calls. I'm not going to put it down to Victory and an offside trap to such. I thought it was just sort of lazy defending to begin with, especially the first goal where Adama Traore loses his man. And very, very fortunate for it to be offside by the barest of margins. So from that perspective, you can probably look at it and think it's lucky only to be 3-0. Probably should have been worse, but hopefully this is a good learning curve for Victory. You probably want one of these types of losses a few games before finals, but at the same time, like I said, you need to be picking up points, otherwise they won't be in finals altogether.
Even like that third goal, like Brandon Hamill is tracking a runner, and then the cutback is obviously coming, and then Hamill gets into this weird no man's land of almost like getting side by side with the keeper. It's like there's a goalkeeper for a reason. And for those of you that have listened to the A-League Off Air podcast, Mac has been going on about this for months. It's like, actually man up on a player. Like, there's just zone press, ball off the line, do whatever you want, but man up on your player, because Hamill is not going to affect the shot going into the net, and he's actually run too far and not given himself any chance of intercepting a cutback from the player trying to score. So I know the game's gone by then, but yeah, it's frustrating. And in the first half, Victory had so many final third entries, and it's just typical of them for the last 3 years not being able to score goals. It's really frustrating. But Jacob, to be fair, part of the reason why they couldn't score was due to terrific performance from Noah James, who not quite a debutant in the A-League, but very close to. The last game. Yeah, maybe. The last game he played was in October of 2020 behind closed doors against Wellington. So his first game in front of fans, which I guess would feel pretty good. And he, especially in that first half, he played very well.
Yeah, it was... the Jets didn't miss Ryan Scott, which is a crazy thing to say considering he's been probably one of their better players so far this season, right? Pretty reliable between the sticks. And Noah James has been able to come in and do arguably an even better job than Scott's managed to do this season. So, the Jets might have something on their hands there with Noah James, because he was, had a tremendous game. And, when you're against a side like the Victory, where there's going to be a lot of pressure in and around the box, you need a keeper who is confident in themselves and their ability to not make those mistakes. That's going to just open the game up for the Victory a little bit, which is, I think, something the Victory were looking for, right? And they have done all season long. It's about that continued applied pressure in the box and around the 18-yard area. And like you said, Lockie, they had a lot of final third entries and things without really that end product to show for it. I think, a large part of that is down to Noah James not really putting a foot wrong. He organised the defence really well. He made some crucial saves as well throughout that first half. So, really, the Jets can sort of look to him as being the reason that they were in that game heading into half-time. And then, from sort of almost the get-go, you say Christian give the Victory maybe 5 or 10 minutes at the start of that second half. But the Jets looked like the much better team in the second half. So, a lot of credit to Noah James, because it was a tremendous performance. And for somebody who hasn't played in the A-League since October 2020, that's such a long time ago. I'd be amazed if anybody even remembers the game that he played in. It's just it's awesome to see players be able to do that and come back as if they never left, if that makes sense, right? Like, it's been a long time, and he's just come straight back in and put in a fantastic performance. And now the Jets have a player on their hands, yes, but they've got a situation where it's like, right, well, so we got 2 goalkeepers now. What do we do with them? So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes from there. But no, tremendous performance, he's deserved all of the plaudits that he's getting on social media as well, because I've seen a lot of people jumping in to say what a tremendous game he had, because it was lights out from him.
I mean, he comes in because of Scott's howler last week, and to be fair, he's done everything possible in his power to hold his spot. So, his spot to lose, I reckon, from here. Christian, Western United in such a packed, kind of finals ladder position, this jostling for all these spots, every point becomes so valuable. And they're playing a team in MacArthur on Sunday who are also in the same boat. They're all trying to get just 1 point, 3 points here and there just to try and get themselves a little bit more of an advantage in the table. John obviously would be disappointed with how they closed this game out. You're leading 2-1. Hiroshi Ibasuki has that chance on the far post, sends it into the post, fails to score, and then Tate Russell just picked a horrible moment to try a really dangerous, I don't even know what you'd call it, switch of play, pass. I don't really know.
Hospital pass.
He lost the ball up into his own penalty box and concedes the goal. Of course, Matt Sutton did a very good job to make that late save to just keep them with the 1 point. But, every little, game is going to matter at the end of this A-League season. And United had it in their hands here and threw it away a little bit.
Yeah, I guess it's a classic example of moments within games that change the course of it, right? You mentioned that Ibuzuki chance in the end to basically seal it. And if that goes in, then you're talking about 3 points in the bag. And it goes the opposite way, right? You're dropping 2 points, and it's like Alois is thinking there saying, the way we've managed this game, we could have done much better. But that goes as well to, I guess, that lack of experience within the squad as well, which we've touched on. this season, that this could be a barrier for them moving forward. And you're going to expect hiccups along the way like this. It's not like they're going to be closing out every single match, and because they just don't have the experience behind them, right? You can only do so much, and it's a learning experience as well. And I think the club and Aloisi know that, right? As much as they're disappointed, I think they would definitely be proud of the performance at the same time, because, I mean, if we were sitting here at the start of the season thinking that West United would be 2-1 up against MacArthur and then concede a last-minute equaliser, like, we'd be praising Western for getting a point, right? Because we predict them to be bottom 2. So to have the season that they're having has just been absolutely unbelievable. So like I said, just a few rough patches and bumps in the road, which is fully expected from this side. But probably MacArthur, you could argue the way that they were sort of pushing for that equaliser, they potentially deserved it, perhaps. But yeah, from West United perspective at home, it was quite disappointing that they couldn't hold on for the win, which would have really cemented themselves in that top 6 position.
I think it was in Campbelltown, right?
It was, yeah.
Sorry, in Campbelltown. So I know why I said Western, but I wanted to mention as well, Wallerty's goal was absolute class as well. That finish was unbelievable. So they do have a lot of quality in that side. I do touch on the inexperienced part, but with that, you do see a lot of talented, bright sparks in there. So it is exciting. It is going to be a learning curve, like I said, but if they can just slowly, gradually build and grow from this and make finals, I think they'll definitely be a dangerous threat for sure.
I almost put this in the rundown, but gathering on your reaction, I'm going to go for it anyway, Jacob. Wallerty, he had a very good game. He got the pre-assist for this first goal, and then the cut inside on Luke Bratton, who is one of the most experienced A-League players that you can come across, and puts that away. He had that thunderbolt early on in the game that was saved as well. This is almost his kind of introduction. I know he's had a few starts now, but he's really put his fingerprint on this game here and kind of announced himself a little bit.
What a player. I remember coming into the season and writing for the Ramble website, the sort of preview for Western's season, and I was like, this is a kid to watch out for. And I'm glad that my words are paying off, because he just keeps performing at such a high level, and he's improving every week, right? We saw a couple of weeks back, was it that game against Sydney, I believe, where he was just tremendous in transition and extremely dynamic and quick. And in this game, we saw the more technical side of him, right? Where he's able to work with the ball in really tight areas. He uses his body well. He can hit the ball like a rocket. I mean, even the goal, obviously he had the one that was saved, that was well hit, but the goal was extremely well hit as well. He seems like he's got the makings of a complete player.
Are you going to make the comparison that everyone's thinking of?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, that Iwasuki might be thinking to himself, hang on, have we got another on our hands here? Because obviously he was playing with him last season, and now he's coming here to Western, where it sort of seems like it might be repeating itself. And Western, a team that eerily similar to how Adelaide were last year as well.
Yeah.
So, the comparisons are very apt. But no, Wallerty, I think what he has shown already that Irankunda didn't necessarily show for a long while with Adelaide is that more technical side of things, right? And that's what we saw with that goal and the way that he played in this game. On the ball, it's not just about being quick and fast and strong. It's about having good touch and awareness and IQ. It's genuinely a scary proposition for other teams in the league, and how you're going to handle a player like that, because you can't commit to a tackle because he'll dribble his way around you. You can't back off because he'll take a shot and hit the target. Like, what do you do? He can put a good ball into the box. He crosses the ball well. So he looks like a very, very, very good player. And, I saw the reaction from Aloisi after he scored, and he just had a big smirk on his face. And it was almost sort of telling me, like, I've been waiting for this moment for everybody to see how
he's done it in training a few times.
Yeah.
No, you know why he was having a smile? Because he thought, okay, it's going to be a $10 million transfer coming our way.
That's right. Well, if Pure's anything to go by, it might be that much. But no, what a great player. I cannot wait to see him more this season.
Yeah, exciting prospect for sure. There were 2 MRP findings out of this round, both in this game. Angus Thurgate has got a 1-match suspension for accruing yellow cards. And then the other one is a show cause notice to Valère Germain for, quote, use of offensive, insulting or abusive language and or gestures against a match official. I believe, if I'm getting the incident right, it's the latter of those two options. And if you've seen it, you'll probably know that he might deserve a week or two. So that sanction will be decided on Tuesday after receiving evidence, I guess you'd call it, from Germain. But yes, I wouldn't be surprised if he misses a couple of MacArthur games. Jacob, let's go back to Friday night because Adelaide, this was an important one for them. We spoke about it midweek. Just the fact that Auckland's had the bye, and after this round they're going to be equal on games. To drop points here would mean to be at least 4, maybe 5 points behind them with an even games played tally. That would be a bit of a stretch to catch up with. Obviously, we still got about 10 games to go, but to win this game is very important to keep themselves in touch, and they did, but only barely. I don't think they were amazing in this game by any stretch, but how often do we talk about championship teams and being able to find a way to win even when you don't play amazing? City, I thought, pretty dominant in the first half, but after halftime that switch flicked and Archie Goodwin kept on this amazing season that he's having.
Well, we mentioned sort of a tiny wind earlier, and that was definitely on full display on Friday night. The wind was blowing quite strongly from the south through to the north, so literally from one goal to the other, meaning that one team had the wind behind them and the other team had it coming into them. And you saw that in the first half with Adelaide. Initially out the gates, they wanted to try and play the ball long and get it out to the fullbacks quickly, but every time they tried it just went out for a throw-in, so quickly abandoned that and played short passes. But then in the second half, and it's something Carl Viet actually spoke about in the post-match press conference, he obviously took Fulami off at half-time and was asked why he did that, and he said, well, because we knew that we were going to have the wind behind us in this second half. Having someone like Yaya who's more direct out there on the wing means that we can get the ball quicker in behind the defensive line and be more of a threat. And fair play, because it paid off. And obviously the goal didn't come from that, it came from a corner, but there still were a much better side in that second half. But yeah, look, I don't think it was a great performance from either team, to be honest. I think they both looked pretty lackluster. City looked good for the first 30 or so minutes. Their press was extremely effective. Yeah. They eliminated all the options that Adelaide had, and that's something that Vidmar spoke about as well. He's saying, look, we know how Adelaide like to play. They don't really have 2 or 3 ways of playing. They have their one way of playing and they stick with it. He's like, so we knew we had to press them hard out the gates, but then the issue is sustaining that over 90 minutes isn't necessarily feasible. And the fact that they couldn't convert the chances in the first half basically meant that the game was over for them. And it was going to be difficult in the second half because they were tired, they were against the wind and things like that. So he had this great game plan, but they just couldn't execute in the final third. So no, it was both teams I think a little bit sloppy. Adelaide lucky to come away with it, but it's one of those games where if you want to win a title, you've got to win these games, right, and take your chances. Archie Goodwin with a fantastic header. Like I saw the corner going in and I thought there's no way anybody's getting to that. And Archie, to be fair, his movement to get to it was tremendous, to beat his man to it. And then the little flicked header over as well, right into the corner. That's a true striker's header, that one. And after last week where he'll probably feel like he missed 2 or 3 chances and should have scored a goal, to get back on the score sheet with Luka Jovanovic away on international duty as well, to know that, okay, I'm scoring goals, and for the team to know, right, our only striker is scoring goals, it's not panic stations, he's back on the score sheet. I think it's going to be huge. And then the other side of things is obviously defensively for Adelaide. It's one of 2 clean sheets they've had this season. They're pretty hard to come by for this side. And while it wasn't a fantastic defensive performance, they did their job, and they were able to keep the ball out of the net. And I thought Ethan Cox in goal stood out for me defensively. It was by far his best game playing for Adelaide so far. Made some really crucial saves in that first half when the defenders in front of him. Obviously, Issei is playing sort of as a makeshift centre-back with all the injuries and absences. Bart Vriends, I thought, wasn't having a great game. Cox was able to stand up and deliver. And we were talking about Noah James earlier. I think it sort of echoes there as well, with Cox kept Adelaide in the game moving into the second half, which allowed them to win it. So, it was sloppy. It was not fantastic to watch. It was probably I'd say the worst. That first half was potentially the worst 45 minutes of football in the A-League this season. It was so boring. But end result is Adelaide are still in touch with Auckland, and that's huge for their season because, you know, drop points at this point of the season, you mentioned Lockie is going to be a killer, and to let Auckland sort of get away, but they're still there, 2 points now, they're still fighting for it, and I think they're actually meeting up against each other in a couple of weeks now, so right. It'll be exciting to see what happens there, because that could be a real sort of title deciding fixture, that one. So yeah, Adelaide are still in form, still in touch, and they'll be taking a lot of confidence from the way that they were able to get the win in this game.
Yeah, you're right, 1st of March, that's going to be a very interesting fixture over in Auckland. Now, Christian, I'm going to put something to you, right? We've all heard of the perfect hat trick. You score with your left foot, you score with your right foot, you score with your head. But may I present to you Zach Clough, the perfect miss, right? There are three things that can happen when you shoot the ball and do not score a goal. You can have the goalkeeper save it, you can hit the woodwork, and you can put it wide out for a goal kick, right? And in a succession of about 1.5 seconds, all those 3 things happened to Zach Clough. And now I went back and I slowed this down. The only way this got better is if the first shot was right foot into the keeper, second header into the bar. The third one, I wasn't sure live. I thought it was his left foot. If it was his left foot, it would have been the double perfect miss, but it wasn't. It was his right. Yeah. So there is room for improvement, but I'm saying the perfect miss for Zach Clough. What do you think?
That was absolute poetry. You took a bit of time to come up with that, didn't you?
Yeah.
No, but... There's probably more ways to do it, right? I mean, he could have had a shot and could have gone out for a throw-in, right? I mean, that would have been the absolute...
No, right. But you can't do 2 of them, though, in the same action.
True. I'm clutching at straws a bit. But, I mean, for a player of Clough's quality, I mean, like, pretty rare to come by to see those all combine into one sort of comedy act, really, if you want to call it that. But no, I mean, like, how do you even, like... Yeah, explain it. I mean, the one on the crossbar as well, extremely unlucky. Obviously not to score there. And then it was just, I guess, you could call it one of those days, but in the end, like for Adelaide in general, that first half could have had 1 or 2 goals there. But in the second half, I thought that response was very telling compared, to last season, where you probably wouldn't see that. You'd see heads drop. You would have seen Melbourne City get on top a bit more, but no, it was complete opposite. And that's what impressed me most about this Adelaide outfit. So, if they can keep this mentality going, especially up until that Auckland game, I think they can really challenge for first place. They really can. I trust them now. I needed to see more from them, but now I have seen a fairly big sample size from them to really give me a lot of confidence. I know Jacob doesn't want me to say it. I'm
thinking back to last season when you were so confident about Adelaide that you put them finishing second, and it's just. I will say you're spot on though, Christian, in that it is a far cry from last season, because it's strange to see, but they're making adjustments in game, and that's something that for Adelaide, and especially under Carl Viet, he's been very good at having a plan A. But it's about how does he adjust in game and make those little small things. And I said, obviously, long ball wasn't working in the first half, so he goes to short passes. He gets Ethan Alagich on the turn, moving into the midfield, that sort of stuff to try and open the game up. We weren't seeing that last year. It was just keep kicking the ball straight to Goodwin and try and get him involved. Keep kicking the ball to Aaron Kunda and getting him involved. It's good to see this development. And yeah, I think you're spot on with that mentality thing, Christian, that if they can keep it up, it's clear this team wants to succeed, so they just need to make sure that they're keeping up with that and their performances match their intent, But
what you just said there, I mean, they're all the simple things, right? I mean, it goes to show what confidence does to a team. Like, to have such that brilliant start, albeit like they had a pretty kind of fixture list. We've got to be honest. I mean, they played some of the bottom half of the table sides, which you can only beat who's in front of you. So fair play to them. But since then, like, they've taken so much confidence and belief from that. And it's just the simple things, right? Just like a short pass, for example. Like last season, they couldn't even do that at times. I mean, they were so disjointed. And you heard Jacob's rant saying, "Oh, why can't they defend properly? Why can't they man mark?" And all this stuff. And now finally, it seems like it's all coming together. And I think Calvert can see that now, and he's got some reassurance now that they can really go a long way this season.
And, this result in combination with a few others, if the Wanderers had held on, like this 3rd to 8th bracket would have just been absolutely insane, right? So there's a gap now between Adelaide in 2nd and Western United, who are currently in 3rd, of 5 points. But then you go from Western on 26, even the Mariners on 21 in 9th place are only 5 points away. And then Phoenix are 2 points behind them. Like, it is actually ridiculous. God knows what's going to happen if the Jets go on a run and actually get a few wins and they start sneaking themselves into the conversation as well. It's getting really crazy tight in there. But one of the teams who I think were written off, and I'm very happy and very prepared to continue to write them off, Perth Glory. But specifically in this game, Ollie Sale, my boy, they've massacred him. What have they done to my boy? Like, it just, this whole season of just having balls fly past your head into the net has clearly done a number on his confidence, because this is a game that the Glory should have won. They had the better of the chances. Lachie Wales, who's had a very good impact since he's come to the football club, providing the assist for Adam Taggart, who, when provided the service, we always know will put goals away. And then to be 1-0 up, Jacob, and just for the ball to come, I know people were saying, hey, Neem, 16-year-old, it's good for him to get his goal and whatever, but it's a routine save. That's what it is. Yeah. That's the fact. And it goes between his legs. And unfortunately, that's the situation he finds himself in, where that error has cost his team 2 points, but probably more crucially, a morale-boosting win. And all of a sudden, that just slips away.
It's harsh, but he has to save that. Like, that is as routine as they come. It's, there's no, and he's been like one of the big, players that the Glory fans have gotten around this season, going, it sucks for him having to be in this team. He's so much better. And then it's, in a game where they can win it, and that's the reason they don't. That really is the sort of knife through the heart. But having said that, Perth still had ample opportunity after that to go on and win it, and they were creating chances. In that last 20 minutes, they created so many chances. Adam Taggart looked just in his best form so far this season. I thought in this game he was so threatening every time he got on the ball. So many chances that they just couldn't put away. Last-ditch saves by Paresh Cullen, blocks on the goal line. Adelaide, Perth will feel like they...
we've moved on.
It's not all about Adelaide.
But no, Perth will feel like they still should have won that, even with Sale's mistake. That just, I think, is salt in the wound into the fact that they didn't win it, because, what more can I say, to be honest? Because
and you feel sorry for
Sale. He has to save it.
You feel sorry for him because he's been such a leader in that side, albeit like he's conceded goal after goal, and most of it really, besides this one, hasn't really been his fault. He's just been put in front.
He's had a few,
but he's been
with the volume,
but in part as well, in front of a shaky defense, and the team just hasn't gelled right. We know this, right? But I think when he concedes a few goals, you can tell the passion he shows, the yelling at his defenders, screaming, showing that real leadership, right? Like he cares. He cares for the jersey. I think that's why fans really, really love him, right? And to have that mistake, like Jacob said, you can't really say much more, but just a routine save.
Yeah, I guess when you come into this point of the season as well, and we spoke about this probably around this time last season, is that when you come to an end of a poor season, what the fans are looking for is those glimpses of optimism and opportunity and belief in the future, right? And they failed that task last year. They conceded 20 goals in the last 3 rounds, something ridiculous like that. They have to do better this time, because as loyal as these Perth fans are, there is a limit to everything, and they have to do better. And they have shown an increase in form since the window is open, and they've been able to rejig their squad a little bit, but they have to keep going. The fans need something. You got to give them something. They've been loyal. They've shown up. What was it, 11,000 last weekend to the game at HPF Park. So you got to give them something. Pat Wood in this game, should he have been sent off, Christian? There was a bit of an elbow flailing about straight to their face. It was kind of one of those where the players dipped down, so maybe the shoulder was where he was aiming, but the head's dipped down and he's collected him. But it seemed pretty full on.
it's one of those ones where is it intentional or not? I mean, looking at it, I don't think it was. I mean, intent isn't everything, right? It can still be a red card regardless, depending on the action. But
Yeah.
I thought I wouldn't have given it as a red card, no bet you guys, but
Laws of the game expert, Jacob Stevens.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. It is in that grey area where, I mean, obviously the laws of the game specifically mention not using intent as an indicator, because how do you know what a player is thinking at any given point in time? But I do still think that it comes into play, and perhaps that might have been a little bit as to why this wasn't a red card here. But yeah, one of those orange card situations where I can sort of see both sides of the argument. So yeah, I'm not too fussed either way, to be honest. If it's a red card, I can back that, and it wasn't a red card, so I can kind of see why. But then from a fan's perspective, I can also imagine being on either side of that. I'm being just so adamant that it is or isn't. So yeah, it's a really difficult situation.
I think the ref had a lot of sympathy for Perth. You're saying they've had a tough season. Let's just let this one slide.
All right. Well, there is our A-League review. As we said, we talked about the Wellington-Brisbane game on last Friday's episode. So now we get to a segment which I've been looking forward to for months. ACL, Asian football, the Champions League.
The coefficient segment. Let's go.
The coefficient segment. The Mariners are already eliminated from the Champions League elites. We know they won't progress to the knockout stages, but they have 2 more games, and there are 2 things on the line. The coefficient is obviously one, and they're playing Johor, a Malaysian side, who are direct competitors in that kind of coefficient area. So we need some wins there. And also, it's a $100,000 US bonus for every win you get in the league phase. So it's not like they're playing for nothing. I don't know how they would have set up any payment structures with their players, but maybe there's $1,000 on the line for each of them that step out, something like that, little win bonus. At home, it's their last Champions League elite game that they're going to get to play at home. And by the looks of how they're going in the league, they're not going to qualify for another one this season at least. So I guess go out on the strong note, Jacob, is the message. Yeah.
It's one of those ones where you've got nothing to lose. So you might as well go out there and fight for that $100,000 paycheck, right? It just makes sense to me to go, yeah, play for the money, because they're realistically, not going to make it back there this season. Probably not going to fight for anything this season in the league. This is their chance to, maybe their silverware this year is a nice check, so they'll get one of those big cardboard ones they give out to charities or whatever as a trophy. But
would it really be much though? I mean, like, just say if they split it a month, or they might have had a bonus in there somewhere in the contract. Like, would the players really, I'm trying to get into their heads, like, would they really factor in that to motivate them?
Football players love money. They love money.
It depends.
It depends, right? Like, even the coefficients, like, the players won't care about that, obviously. I mean, the Mariners aren't a club who are always going to compete consistently in that top 2 placing, right? It's not like a Victor or a Sydney. Even then, they wouldn't really care. So you can't use that. And the money side of it probably is their saving grace in terms of motivation, depending on what they get. But it's like Jacob said, it's
maybe
really
the club needs to go, this $100,000, it'll secure the future of the club. If we don't win this game, the club's going to fold. You have no job. It's use it as a threat almost.
Well, I mean, there is slightly a more positive outlook in the other game this week, because Sydney FC are playing their round of 16 first leg against Bangkok United. And this will actually be played at Sydney Football Stadium. So for the knockout stages, they're going back to Moore Park, which is exciting, I think. Hopefully it means they can attract a few more people, just kind of purely by elevating the status of the game, Christian.
Yeah.
But also, we're talking about the coefficient. CEO of Sydney FC, Mark Aubrey, is on board with me. He had a few comments, I think it was about a month ago, when they announced that they were moving the game, saying this game isn't just about Sydney FC, it's about the future of Australian football. They're on for the coefficient. Let's go. Thailand, another one of those nations, by the way, that we're closely competing with.
yeah, a big game. I think fully expect Sydney to get the job done. I mean, if they don't, I'd be really surprised. I don't want to underestimate, Bangkok, but I think the real test would come against Jeonbuk in that game. If they happen to go through, I think the real test would come there. So, yeah, I mean, this is a period of the season where the games stack up, right? They've just come off a Sydney derby, and this is where rotation really comes into it, right? So Ufuk Talay going to have some big decisions to make in terms of team selection and who he starts, who he decides to bring off the bench. He does have quite a few options now with a couple of players returning. So, yeah, I hope for Australian football's sake that Sydney can obviously get the job done and the Mariners too.
Yeah, so out of the top 7 nations in the East, Australia has the worst coefficient totals so far this season. And of course, it's averaged between all of the teams that compete. So we have 2 teams to compete. So for every point that Sydney FC earn, it's cut in half because the Mariners have barely done anything. So it's tough, but we'll get there.
Central, can we put a 5-year ban on Central Coast?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, and I'm going to throw the plug in here. So we've launched, as part of the Roundball Australia podcast network, a new show on Monday this week called The Final Frontier, which is headed up by Matt Olsen, who's appeared on this podcast a couple of times. And the focus of this show is just about football in the kind of Asia-Pacific region, that being kind of the final frontier of world football to conquer. And in it, he talks about to Kenta, who is his American-Japanese guest, that one of the reasons why a lot of other Asian people don't understand why Australia is so bad in the Champions League, particularly the Champions League Elite or the top Champions League, whatever it has been in years past, is because of the salary cap and the financial state of the league, and because a team like the Mariners go on and win the premiership and then have all their best players are taken away. So we're actually sending a version of that team that is significantly depleted to the one that actually won the success of qualifying for the competition in the first place. So you can put a ban on individual clubs all you like, but the reality is, unless you're probably a Melbourne City, Melbourne Victory, Western Sydney or Sydney FC, you're going to find it really hard to, number one, win the A-League, have good players taken away, and then replenish them successfully to be successful in the Champions League Elite. So there is now more reward on offer for owners and clubs to be able to do that, because the money and the prize money is really, really attractive. But it's always going to be hard, Christian.
That's what I'm essentially saying, though. Ban half of the competition. I reckon just let Melbourne City, Victory, Wanderers, let a few of them just be able to compete. Let them
rather than a playoff for the Australia Cup, it should be the bottom 2 sides are banned from Asian competition for 5 years.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I guess though, like long term, right? We want to see Australian teams competing. Is it ever going to happen, Jacob? Do you ever see an Australian team winning the Champions League again?
Oh, I do. I just don't think we can expect regularly competitive teams competing, if that makes sense. It's one of those things where I think we will see teams go on a run every 5 to 10 years, maybe. And then, we'll go, do you remember the days of X? Oh, and then the Wanderers before them, and then Adelaide before them, and it's going to be something where I think we will see it. But people who have this vision of Australia becoming a true powerhouse, especially within the next 10, 20 years, I think you've got to sort of ground your expectations a little bit more, because Australia has a lot of catching up to do in that respect. So while we might see good teams come in and go on good runs, and Sydney are one of those teams who are, I think, perfectly capable of doing so, it's not something we're going to see consistently. So we've got to make sure that we make a big deal of it when it happens, because, moving this game to Sydney Football Stadium, that's huge. Hopefully it gets a decent crowd, and hopefully there's a build up around it by the club to go, this is we can push on here. It's a knockout tournament in Asia. You mentioned knockout. Australian fans love that stuff. They're going to turn up in droves for that. Like, really try and sell how important this is for the club. Like, this could be like our big chance for the next 10 years to compete in this tournament, sort of thing. It's I think if we can sell it in the moment and really hype up the moment, then I think that's doing a fantastic job and doing a lot better than we have done in the past, because I think that the days of consistently competing are still a long way away from us at this point.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Obviously, Japan and Korea in the East represent this really long-term goal to be able to compete regularly with those football clubs. But the likes of, even China are good, but in terms of their coefficient, they've had their issues in the last 8 years as well. So they're catchable, and Thailand is catchable. So, and to get into third on the rankings gives you equal access to competitions as second place, which Japan and Korea will float between. So getting up into that third place, getting 2+1 into the Champions League elite, and then an entry into the Champions League 2, that would be a really good place to be, I think, for Australian sides in hopefully 4 to 5 years' time. That's the kind of time frame, at least, that I'm thinking. So yes, go check out the Final Frontier. You can go to the Round Ball socials, wherever you get them, and you find links to that. But it's got its own YouTube channel, its own podcast platform as well. But that's a really quality show that Matt's put a lot of work into as well. But that will do for this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. Christian Montegan, thank you for your company tonight. Get keen for the Mariners tomorrow.
Can't say I can't get too keen, to be honest. I mean, I don't have a share. I don't have a share in the money. So if the Mariners win, there's nothing in it for me. So no, I hope the Mariners do win for the coefficient. But yeah, that's about it. I'm not really going to stress over it, to be honest.
Jacob Stevens, thank you. I love that last line, for the coefficient.
For the coefficient, that's right. For the coefficient and $100,000. I'll hopefully be watching it. I've got nothing on tomorrow night, as far as I'm aware. So hopefully it's a good game, and not like the 90 minutes we saw on Friday.
I just love the idea of, like, instead of those stories of managers with like photos of pundits saying that they'd finished bottom of the league, it's just a big banner that says for the coefficient. To motivate the teams as they go out in Asia. That would be spectacular. Anyway, we will be back on Friday to review those 2 games, and then look forward to the weekend of A-League action. It's almost crunch time now. We're almost at the run home. It's getting very interesting seeing where all these teams are finishing up, but we will see you then. Thank you for listening today. Goodbye.